After my parents died, I lived with my only brother who always spoke the language of my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law would beat me in front of my brother, but he would not say anything. She thought it was Tahira's fault. Otherwise, how could my wife do anything wrong? And in this matter, she kept doing wrong after wrong. When I grew up, I was responsible for all the work of their house. My sister-in-law would listen to the phone all day, talking to who she didn't know, and I would work in the scorching sun. Sometimes, I would burst into tears because life was starting to hurt me so much. My brother once or twice talked about my marriage, but my sister-in-law would always put it off, saying that Tahira is still a child. If she doesn't take care of this house, how will she be able to take care of Cyril after marriage? My brother would shake his head and remain silent. He had never given me the love and respect of a brother. I had forgotten that I had a sister and some of her responsibilities were also on me. One day, while cleaning the kitchen, 2 glasses broke. That day, this woman made me drink a lot. The next day, I acted so much in front of my brother that my brother didn't even look at my face and scolded me and went to work. My sister-in-law was suffering here. It had been a week since this incident. I was sitting in the courtyard cleaning wheat. The heat was also very high from above, but my sister-in-law told me that I had to do the work no matter what. Just then, a cream seller came outside. Hearing his voice made my heart want to eat ice cream. I peeked in and saw my brother-in-law sleeping. I thought to myself, I put some wheat in a bowl and bought ice cream in exchange for this wheat. The peddler was very young and handsome. I had thought that if I wanted to live in this house, I would have to use a little trickery and deceit. Thinking this, I hid some wheat in an old bag. Now, every afternoon, I secretly ate ice cream. Gradually, my acquaintance with this peddler grew and we became friends. Perhaps I would never have done this, but for how imprisoned and painful my life had been made. Somewhere or other, I also had to escape. Now, I kept thinking about this peddler whose name was Arshad. For the world, he must be making peddlers. But for me, he was no less than a prince. Arshad had no parents. He had a sister as big as me. There was no objection to marrying me except for me, while both obstacles and objections were present in the form of brother and sister-in-law. I could never convince them for this, even if I wanted to. I decided to run away from home and even swore never to come back here. My brother and sister-in-law were also at a wedding and I was alone at home. As soon as they left, I put 2 or 4 pairs of my gold bangles in a bag. My mother had left 2 gold bangles for me. From there, she picked up the bangles and some other necessary things and fled with Arshad. After about an hour, we both reached her small house. Arshad's sister's name was Naila. She was very happy to meet me and had prepared a delicious meal before I arrived. After eating, the 3 of us reached the court. In the next 2 hours, our marriage was done and that Tahira, who had no identity, was standing proudly with her husband's honor. I was very happy. My life had become very beautiful. I did not let Naila do anything and did all the work with my own hands. She also fell in love with me in a few days. She was very fond of reading and she used to study all day long. Arshad started looking for a relationship for his sister Naila. She seemed young to me at that time, but I didn't speak up about it because I remembered my time when my brothers wanted to marry me and my sister-in-law didn't let it happen, so I kept quiet. As soon as her exams were over, we found a good place and got Naila married. Now I was completely alone at home. I used to feel anxious all the time, but God blessed me with His blessings and ended this loneliness. I had 2 twin daughters. Arshad's feet were barely touching the ground when 2 small buds were placed in his hands. In this joy, he went out to buy sweets and never returned. He was only old enough to see his daughters. A speeding truck crushed him and he was lying on the road, cold. A nurse in this hospital was also from our neighborhood and she knew me well. Hearing this bad news, my mind went crazy. And for the next 2 days, I did not regain consciousness. The same nurse took care of me and took care of my daughters. It was very difficult to live after Arshad, but I found the courage to do so by looking at my daughters. When I saw their faces, I realized that they also had to feed their stomachs. After Arshad left, Naila stayed with me for 2 weeks and then went back. I would wake up several times at night and check the door of my small house. It was left open by mistake. If cats ran on the roof, there would be a noise, after which I would spend the whole night awake. I would lock the door of the house even in broad daylight. The girls were small, and I could not leave them at home. I sold my mother's 2 bangles, which I had picked up while running away from home, to a nearby jeweler. Those bangles were made in good times, for which I got a good price. Which was enough for my bad time, as there was everything I needed in the house. I was just worried about food and drink. So I used to meet all the expenses from this money. Naila also used to give me money from time to time. He did not like to take money, but until the girls grew up, I had to stay at home and take care of them. When the girls were a year old, I started cleaning a house in my street. Leaving both the girls to sleep in the morning, I would quickly do all the work. By the time the girls were 3 years old, our expenses had also increased. And I could not even make ends meet by staying at home. I begged the madam to work as a nanny in a government school and I would take my girls there too, since they were small and could not read or write. But they would be in front of my eyes all day and I would take care of them. Arshad wanted his children to study a lot and to get out of this life and join the life of educated people. My girls were now 4 years old. One day, I was taking care of the children in such a school when my brother-in-law also came there. Then it turned out that she didn't even have a nose, but she could read. As soon as she saw me, she came straight towards me and slapped me in the face in front of the full school. It was the break time for the children and the whole school was witness to my disrespect. Bobby didn't stop there. She made a mockery of my entire past life in front of all the children standing there. My daughters were also playing with all those children. As soon as Bobby slapped her, she came to me. This woman made all the accusations she wanted to make against me, but as soon as she saw my daughters, she wanted to hit them too. But thankfully, someone had informed Madam about this spectacle. She came out herself and stopped this escalating spectacle and called me and Bobby to her office. Bobby didn't show any shame or consideration there either and kept shouting at me while I stood quietly with my 2 daughters on one side. Then what was destined to happen happened. Madam expelled Bobby's daughter from school. According to her, she cannot educate the daughter of a woman whose mother does not care about the honor of the educational institution. At the same time, she also fired me from my job. Once again, this woman took away my support. She took away the tears that were falling down my daughters' throats. She was supposed to get many more schools for her children, but what was to become of me and my children? While taking the steps to return, similar questions were circulating in my mind. I returned home quietly, but this is the power of God. When one path is closed for you, another automatically opens. In the evening, my Nand Nayaka came to meet me. I had always treated her well because my late mother used to say that you should feed guests more than your means so that their blessings also enter your food. So, with whatever money I had, I went and bought meat and baked rotis from the oven. I did not worry about what we would eat tomorrow because God Himself had promised sustenance, so this was not part of my worries. Sister, I want to say something. If you believe me, Naila has never said such a thing. So I also got close to her. Yes, Naila, speak. Till today you have never asked permission like this. Sister, you may or may not feel bad. But seeing your condition, I cannot let go of you. I asked her to speak clearly. Don't send riddles without reason and say what you want to say. To which she said slowly, Sister, you should get married. In my eyes, there is a relationship. Naila's words made me silent where I was. How can I wish to marry someone else after Arshad's departure? Look, Naila, you have known me my entire life, but I have never thought of such a thing, nor do I have any desire. Sister, I have come to know that you have been expelled from school. A teacher from the same school lives in my neighborhood. When I went to drop my child off for tuition with her, she told me. That's why I ran to you. Now your in-laws live in the same city. You will clash with them many times. Then how will you be able to educate your daughters well in such a situation? Naila's words were true, but I could not risk my daughter's future by getting married again. Whatever was, I had to stay the same. Naila, you are right, but I cannot get married. Yes, if I ever get the opportunity to move to another city, I will not waste a moment. On my words, she kept quiet and went back home. But the next morning, she came to see me again, giggling and said, Look, brother, when a person makes a commitment to do something with a sincere heart, nature itself makes ways for it. My husband's acquaintances have called a woman who can take care of children in an orphanage. She will get the same accommodation and a salary that is also worthy of living. But the best thing is that the job is in another city. Now that you have moved there, you will see that more ways will open up. I thanked God, and the next day we were in another city. Now the girls were not a problem, and I also had experience in this job. I started working in an orphanage. I had small children in my group, whom I took care of with great care. The people of the institution were very happy with my work. The accommodation in the orphanage was free and there was a salary, only the food was the cost. How much can we afford that? The days started passing well and I got my daughters admitted to school. I was sure that one day both my daughters would become something or the other and die. Of course, I was not educated, but I was very keen on teaching my daughters. Every evening, when I opened their bags and made them do their homework or saw them writing, my eyes would uncontrollably get wet and I started missing Arshad. Everyone says that she will survive if she is a widow, but I tell you all that it is very difficult for both widows and divorcees to live. They die moment by moment and live moment by moment every day. Every time they talk, they remember some story or sentence from their past. I was completely devastated by Arshad's sudden death, but now that I have recovered, I remember him again after seeing the cute actions of my daughters. I did the same thing and did not know when my daughters grew up. After school, I got them admitted to a handicraft college, where they were also taught sewing and frying along with education. I still worked in an orphanage. I had given my husband Arshad's house to my sister-in-law Naila. How could I claim her property? Her husband had to start a business. There was also a need for something else. My daughters grew up, but my salary only increased by a few hundred rupees and remained the same. At the same time, expenses and inflation were also putting a damper on my life. My daughter's college was far away. Dean used to come to pick them up. The best thing about Dean was that the driver was a woman who would pick them up from home and drop them off right at home. The fare was also very reasonable for this woman. My daughters had never asked me for money after going to the handicraft college. Whenever I would talk about giving them money, she would say that the teacher would sew some new suits for them and in return she would give them money. That is why they do not want money. I was very proud of my daughters because every day they would bring me a little money. Along with their studies, they had also learned sewing, but every day when they returned home, their back and legs would hurt a lot and they would fall asleep as soon as they got home. For the first few days, I ignored it, thinking it was fatigue, but it had become a daily routine. Now I started wondering what kind of fatigue was there that was not even taking the name of getting off. My daughters, who used to do a little work earlier, had now completely stopped doing that. Even on her day off, she would sleep all day in a state of unconsciousness. The strange thing was that she didn't even tell me anything. My two daughters were now bringing a lot of money every day. Now I started to doubt the money thing. One day I went to her college. But when I went there, I found out that my daughters were not coming to college. Hearing this, my ears started ringing that if they weren't going to college, where would they go? I asked the teacher about the suit sewing, and she became angry that it had been 3 months since we came to college. Why would we risk our jobs by sewing new suits from these girls? There is no girl who can learn to sew suits in 3 months. I came back and stayed awake the whole night. I couldn't get any peace at all. I didn't ask the girls anything because maybe they would cheat. I wanted to see everything with my own eyes. I don't know why when you wait for something, it gets so far away. It was also very difficult in the morning. I gave my elder daughter leave and said that you should go to the orphanage in my place today. She hesitated at my words but then left. I put on the veil in her place and got into the car with my younger daughter, but at that moment I was heartbroken when the woman stopped halfway and gave me a cup, thinking that I was Mariam, my elder daughter. I was looking at the cup like a madman. I had forbidden the younger daughter to say anything and she was repeatedly twisting her fingers in a state of anxiety. The woman driver said, "Go Mariam, start your work and yes, try to bring more alms today. I will also increase your money." But this thing proved to be the final nail in the coffin. I immediately took off the veil. Seeing me, the woman almost jumped out of her seat. I had a small Nokia mobile with me, which I showed her and said, "Tell me in detail, otherwise I will call the police right now, and if I can't, my elder daughter is at home and she will call, so tell us the whole truth without causing any harm." She kept biting her lips anxiously for a few moments but did not speak. Then my younger daughter spoke up. "Mom, this woman scares us, even beats us, and says that if we do not beg for her, she will send goons to kill you, and she also gives us a little money every day."